Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Tuesday, January 20th. Our first order of business is additions and deletions. I don't have any additions or deletions, but I would like to move the Board of Cannabis Commissioners up on the agenda following special event permit requests. If everyone's okay with that.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Any other additions or deletions? Yes.
Could we add a brief executive session discussion on the police department union contract to the end of the meeting? It's just an update.
So moved. Second.
All right, so we have a motion to add an additional executive section on the update on the PD contract. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up is amendment and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 6th?
So moved.
Second.
Any additions, corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up is public comment, where members of the public are invited to address the board on matters not on our agenda. First is Ted Plemenos from Rutland City Public Schools to present the FY26 budget. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for making some time for us to speak briefly tonight about the proposed fiscal year 2026 school district budget. A few years ago, we started a practice whereby myself and members of our board, several of whom we have here tonight, and members of our senior administration, who are also joining us tonight, would come and make ourselves available to speak with you as civic leaders of our community. The idea being that it helps everyone if we can coordinate together, exchange and share views and information. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that again this year, and we're glad to come back anytime if you have questions for us in the interim. Sometimes we come in July when the actual tax rate gets finalized, and we're glad to do that again. So on the page 2 of the handout that you have, you'll see several key messages for fiscal 26. I won't read through all of them. The good news is we have a level service programming budget scheduled in terms of maintaining key educational programs, maintaining staffing near our current year levels. As you know, we do not set the budget in order to achieve a specific tax rate. We budget to achieve excellence in education, but we're very cognizant and sensitive to the fact that that results in a tax rate, and we need to be very considerate of our tax-paying constituents and fellow community members. And so it's good news that at this point, based on the information that we have, it looks like the tax rate, the homestead property tax rate for fiscal 26 could drop by about 6 cents from the current year of $1.67 to $1.61. Now, I want to emphasize that while that's good news at this time, that estimate is contingent upon what you may be familiar with, the property yield, which is announced every year in December by the tax commissioner. This year, in his letter, the commissioner announced a yield of about $8,500. The number isn't so important right now. What's important is that's not final. And it will not be final until the legislature decides in the spring, typically in May or June, what the final rate would be. And I'm mentioning this point to you just to put this estimate in context, because if that current yield of 85.53 is where it stands right now, if that were to be reduced by the state by just $300 to $8,200 and change, that would change this tax rate estimate. And the tax rate estimate, instead of being a decline to 161, would be flat at 167. So that shows you how sensitive the tax rates can be to movements in the yield. So if all goes well, though, and if these current estimates hold up, that $1.61 will be closer back into the range that we had in recent years. It wasn't that long ago that you might recall our tax rates in 23 were $1.57 and in 24 were $1.58, and we're very glad to get back to that range. I do want to mention to you that many of you are aware, I hope, that there are income eligibility credits that can apply against homestead tax rates. And if you look at Census Bureau data, for average household income in Rutland County in recent years. And if you look at where our demographics are relative to the income thresholds set for those income tax credits, approximately 80% of Rutland County, and so it's beyond just the city because the Census Bureau does it on a county basis, of Rutland County homeowners would be eligible for at least a portion of that credit. And it's not until your household income gets into the $120,000 a year range or above where you lose eligibility for any of that credit, and then you pay the full posted rate. Okay, so the good news is the rate's going down, and there are a lot of people who actually don't pay the full posted rate. Sharon, you look like you have a question.
No, I'm just doing the math in my head thinking, how much do my money make? Because I certainly don't get a relief.
And it is on a 1-year lag. That income credit tends to follow you on your 1-year lag in a typical year, although the legislature's trying to accelerate that.
No, that's all. I was just thinking.
You bet. So, at any rate, next point, per pupil education spending. And we're going to talk just briefly about this, and I'm going to show you some resources we have on our website so you can delve further into it if you wish. But a metric that we follow closely, and it's defined by the AOE, Agency of Education, is our per pupil education spending is estimated to decline to just under $12,200 this year, a decline of about 2%. But as you'll see elsewhere in the charts, our total expenses, top line, everything that we would spend, are estimated to go up about 5%. To $67 million. So you might ask, well, Ted, how can your total expenses go up and your per pupil education spending go down? And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But anyway, metric changes that have been made by the AOE in recent years per Act 127, they changed some of the student weights in these calculations. The good news is they were very beneficial for our community in both 25 and 26. Some people would say, oh, good, you got some benefits. I would say, well, that was bringing us back to where we should have been in previous years, but at least the situation looks better for us now. You've probably heard before of our 75-25 rule, which says that on average for each dollar of education spending, about 75 cents flows in from outside of the community. About 25 cents is funded by local homestead taxes and local non-homestead taxes. And that 25 cents, if you're interested, that breaks down into about 10 cents for the homestead and about 15 cents for the non-homestead in a typical year. The last couple of years have not been typical because the last couple of years we were utilizing a total of $17 million of one-time ESSER federal grants, and that helped us to do a lot of wonderful things for our schools. We did a lot of programming for our students, both in terms of tutoring and other important programs to help from COVID recovery. As you'll see from the chart, we made a lot of infrastructure enhancements that not only improve air quality and the healthiness of our buildings, but also then take those items off of the agenda for having to fund with local funds in the coming years. The team worked very hard for several years to use basically 99.99% of those funds. I mean, it was truly amazing. Any questions about the key messages? Okay, let me move on then to the next page. So I want you to see the ballot language that will appear on town meeting day. And, I like numbers, so you won't be surprised when I tell you this has 62 words, and it has 3 numbers. And all of those words and all of those numbers are required by the legislature, okay? We don't get to change the wording at all. And if you would like to test that for yourself and take a look, there's a URL at the very bottom of the page in shading there, and you can look up the official version of House Bill 887, which set that and which we follow with delight. But there are some issues that get raised from time to time in the specific numbers that we're required to put in there, and I'm going to talk with you a bit about that in a minute. But let's go on to page 4, because one of the questions that these metrics raise is, what are you spending per pupil? And again, what I want to emphasize is that the words that we're using and the numbers that we're showing are mandated by both the legislature and by the Agency of Education. And the Agency of Education, as you won't be surprised probably to hear, in their stewardship and guidance on reporting these metrics, they have us follow a number of different definitions. One of them is called education spending. And that term, education spending, is very important, and it's different from total expenditures. This is the amount that is going to have to be paid by Vermont taxpayers. And as you might infer, well, what would that be? Well, if I take my total expenditures and I back out whatever federal grants I'm getting and whatever local and other revenues I might be getting, then whatever's left over on net has to be paid by the state. That's called education spending, and naturally, since that's what Vermont has to raise, that's what drives homestead property tax rates, not the total expenditures, okay?
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Okay, so you raised the 67 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then that percent goes to the tax rate.
Nope.
Well, whatever education spending.
And
goes to the
education
tax
spending,
rate.
right.
Right, okay. But what, with the revenue that comes in from giving towns, tuition towns.
Like the $3 million of tuition that we were
Right.
talking about earlier. That's included in the offsets.
That's included in the 67 million?
Yes, as a matter of fact, let's just for a moment, to help answer your question, let's go forward to page 5.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll come back. So there's the top line expenses. You can see in the middle in the blue shading, the FY26 budget, 25 is next to it. That's the current year, just see. So there's the 67 million. That revenues, federal, local, and other, there's $3 million of tuitions in that 23.8 that we're getting from other local towns that help offset our costs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? And so that results in, it's called state funding on this chart, but that's your education spending now. The education spending that's going to drive our tax rate after these offsets is $43,000,004.
Okay.
And while I'm here, I'll just take the opportunity to point out, well, gee, look at that. It's only going up by 3%, which is less than the expense percent increase because we're getting some additional bump on this line. Total expenses going up by 3.4 million, other offsets going up by almost 2 million, so the net to be funded by the state's going up by a lesser $1.5 million. So it's just the way some of these relative numbers are working out. I don't want to confuse people because it's very involved, so I'm going to keep moving along, but you know where to find me if you have some questions, right? But what I wanted to say is, just going back quickly to page 4, so another element in this equation and conversation is called long-term weighted average daily membership. So lots of times there are questions about, well, how many students do you have and how do you measure students? And I would tell you that I know of at least half a dozen different measures of students that get used at different points in the process. So it's always important to ask, which one are you using now and for what purpose? It should give you a clue, the fact that long-term weighted average daily membership is 6 words long. It should give you a clue that there's a lot of components in this thing, and it's not easily calculated. But for Rutland City, the good news message is that was changed beneficially by Act 127 a couple years ago, and it has helped us, brought us back to where we should be in terms of student metrics. Okay, so let's flip back to page 5 for a moment. We were looking at how some of those different revenues and expense lines and state fundings are moving at different percentages. Now I want to just kind of go down the chart a little bit and say, well, let's go all the way down to that bottom line, per pupil education spending. Okay, Ted, you talked about that already. You said that that's what's going to drive my tax rate. That's going down by 1.5% year to year, 12,400 to 12,200. Wait a minute, how does that go down when my total expenses are going up? And part of the answer lies in the fact that the metric for students that we're going to be using per the AOE, long-term weighted average daily membership, that's going up by 5%. And that's going up by 5% for reasons that, you know, we understand, but part of it is related to this new student set of metrics, okay? Now, at this point, you might be saying, well, wait a minute. These numbers, are you really sure how all that works? And by the way, how do you end up with 3,500 students when you've said before in our classrooms we have about 1,800, you know, or maybe 1,850? So that kind of reminds me of something Mark Twain once said, which I put on the next chart, page 6, who, when Mark Twain pointed out very appropriately, you know, there are 3 kinds of lies. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. So you always have to be very careful of the statistics you're using. And I put in as a little inset, an illustration of that. Yeah, if you look at the roll count, when we count heads in our classrooms, that's in a given month maybe about 1,800 or 1,850. If we look at it a little bit differently, looking at just average daily membership, which excludes those students who have come into our classrooms from other towns, okay? So that ADM number is a little bit lower. Then you say, now we're going to do the weights for Act 127. And the weights give us credit for more than 1,800 equivalent students. That gives us a lot of extra, bless you, that gives us a lot of extra weighting for these calculations. So they're not physical students, but it's a way that the state is using a methodology to give us more taxing ability or to spend money without raising our tax rates more, because they're saying, well, you know what, you don't have to use 1,700, you get to use 3,555. And that is why when you take the education spending and you divide by this number, you end up with something that's closer to 12,000, as opposed to if you took the top line expenses and divided by 1,800, you'd be at 35,000, and that makes no sense. Mathematically, it's correct, but it's totally irrelevant because it doesn't relate to taxes. So if I've confused you perfectly up until now, then the next page is very important. And I would strongly encourage you, if you have 7.5 minutes to spare, I would really encourage you to look at a video that we have hung out on the school finance landing page for our website, and you can find it. Many other school districts and supervisory unions have it out there too. Lola will tell you everything you want to know about school funding in Vermont. I mean, it is probably the most clear description I have ever seen. And so, and I will tell you, as clear as it is, I even watched it 2 or 3 times because it's just so well done. But if you want more resources, over on the right-hand side of the panel, also on our website, you'll see that we have a list of some live events that we're going to be conducting. We're going to make, we're scheduling events in the community where we can go and on specific days at specific times, we can meet with small groups. Several colleagues and myself will be there. We can answer questions when there's more time and in that kind of a setting. The telephone number is there if you want to call in with your question instead. Second arrow you've seen there, we've hung out the charts that the school commissioners reviewed last week as the basis for approving this. We've got a glossary out there, and we've got a little bit more video out there too. So we're trying to provide as much transparency as we can for a complex subject that, you know, is easily misunderstood, especially when we only talk about it once or twice per year. But we're here for you, and we really want to answer your questions, because I will tell you that, I mean, for all the years that I've been involved in various financial activities, this is probably one of, if not the best budget I have ever seen in terms of meeting our educational needs while being as tight as we possibly can with stewarding our budget. And that's not to say it's perfect, because nothing's perfect. If we find opportunities to save, we will, but we feel really good about bringing this forward to the voters, and so we're really glad to talk about it.
Any questions from the board? Alderman McCann.
Thank you. So on page 5 with the long-term weighted average daily number, looks like an increase of 177 and change. You mentioned that that is coming from just the weighting, but is any of that related to an actual increase in students, either by people aging in or by people moving into town?
So that's a great question. And we have, and in total, the answer is no. Because in total, the way the average membership without the weights is working is it's actually decreasing ever so slightly this year versus next year. I mean, it's basically statistically flat. That movement that you're talking about, though, I believe we see in the sense that it has arrested what had been a 2% decline every year, okay? And that seems to be slowing down. Now, whether it's 2% or 1%, for example, if you look at some of the enrollment reports that our school registrar does a few times during the year, I compared October of 24 versus October 23. That one was down about 1%. Okay, so about flat. But in years earlier, that was typically down 2%. So I think there is some impact of what you are saying. It just is not responsible for the increase. It's helping to keep it flat.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other members of the public who wish to address the board on matters not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to communications from the mayor.
Good evening. Slide up here. Thanks to Ted and the school board and all the administrators and everybody who came in to support tonight. Ted, I think that's your shortest presentation ever, and we appreciate it. Nice job. So I've got a couple business level things to do tonight. First off, the state of Vermont, under some new legislation, Section 24 VSA 1995E, states that each municipality acting through its legislative body shall designate an employee at its liaison to the State Ethics Commission. We have to do that by the end of the month. And this is not in the charter, so this is not one where you need to table. We could just vote on it openly tonight. So I would like to request that the board suspend the rules and make a motion to appoint Ellen, our HR director, as the ethics liaison for the State Ethics Commission.
So move. Suspend the rules.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to suspend the rules. It's been seconded. Any debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, and, go ahead, Bill, sorry.
Alderman Gillen?
Move to accept Helen as our representative on the,
The ethics liaison to the State Ethics Commission.
so moved.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to appoint Ellen Coyle as our municipal ethics liaison. Any discussion or debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Ellen, for your willingness to do this. Thank you, board, for making the motion and approving it. I have the option tax motions. So these are the residual motions from our budgeting process. So this is for the FY24 option tax revenue, so revenue that came in over the previous year, that will go to the FY26 DPW spend that we voted in the DPW committee and then at the budget meeting to put off to this. So I have 4 motions in total here. I'll read each one initially. The rules will need to be suspended for this to work. Do you want to do that first?
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to suspend the rules. It's been seconded. Any debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Go ahead.
So the motion to approve the assignment of $300,000 of the FY24 1% option tax revenue to DPW streets for paving in FY26.
So moved. Second.
All right, so the motion is to approve the assignment of $300,000 of the FY24 1% option tax revenue to DPW streets for paving in FY26. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great. A motion to approve the assignment of $25,000 for the FY24 1% option tax revenue to DPW streets for guardrails in FY26.
So moved. Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the assignment of $25,000 of the FY24 1% option tax revenue to DPW streets for guardrails in FY26. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
A motion to approve the assignment of $65,000 for the FY24 1% option tax revenue to DPW streets for concrete and precast in FY26.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve assignment of $65,000 of the FY24 1% option tax revenue to DPW streets for concrete and precast in FY26. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and this last one is the motion to approve the remaining balance of the FY24 1% option tax revenue up to $350,000 be assigned to the Capital Reserve Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Is it 350?
Yes, 350. I know I gave you a 380 note, but Mary and I did the math again. It's 350.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the remaining balance of the FY24 1% option tax revenue up to $350,000 to be assigned to the Capital Reserve Fund. Any discussion or debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd like to ask the committee, or ask the board, to refer to committee the issue of absentee landlords and response times. So let me give you a little context. In speaking with our 2 chiefs, our police chief, our fire chief, and Mark Sadekursky from our Building and Zoning Department, one of the biggest challenges that we have when addressing issues in the city are landlords that do not respond in a timely fashion, or send someone to respond in a timely fashion, a property manager or somebody on site that's designated as that property manager. This can include anything from a fire to a burst pipe to a nuisance issue. And this has become very problematic for our departments, where they're actually sitting and waiting, sometimes for hours on end, for landlords or their designees to show up. We don't have anything in ordinance to enforce this. The issues extend far beyond that waiting time. We have issues with absentee landlords who don't respond to ordinance letters and don't respond to tickets and requests from our department. And the conversation has been that we need to address this so that our residents that live in the city, even if they're renters, have good service from the people that are in charge of their properties. So with that, I'd like to ask the board to refer the issue of absentee landlords and response times to the Charter and Ordinance Committee.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
All right, so we have a motion to refer the issue of absentee landlords and response times to the Charter and Ordinance Committee. Any discussion on the referral?
Yes.
Yes. Alderman Gillum.
I think this is a great move because we're having such a hard time in the northwest neighborhoods of landlords that don't even live in the city. And when we're having an emergency, we can't find them, we can't get them. Especially the other night when we had, flooding and a water break. A lot of these tenants couldn't get a hold of their landlords because they had no water. So this is a good move for us.
Alderwoman McClure.
Speaking from the perspective of a tenant, I'm very, very grateful. I have not always been as lucky as I am now to have a good landlord, so to know that there'll be systems in place to protect tenants, I'm very pro this going.
Any further discussion or debate on the referral? So again, the motion is to refer the issue of absentee landlords and response times to the Charter and Ordinance Committee. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great. And on that particular subject, one of the things that seems to be a bit of a hindrance with getting new landlords that do live in the city, who may own property and may have a duplex or even a triplex that they're not currently renting out, is the challenges of landlord-tenant laws in Vermont. It can be problematic. It's difficult to understand. Being able to evict people has become harder, and that can be a problem, especially for tenants that are causing problems in units and not following their lease. So we are going to be working on, with our partners, on a landlord education package, basically being able to work with our teams, and we'll have a third party doing most of this. It will cost nothing, but the idea of basically working with the landlord association and the tenants associations, so both landlords and tenants can learn how to be good landlords and good tenants. So over the next month or so, you'll hear an announcement about a class that'll start. Hopefully it's the good landlord one first. We have plenty of tenants that have places to live. We don't have enough landlords, so we'll start with that. But we'll hopefully have some good tenant classes as well.
Alderwoman Davis.
Who's doing the class?
So I'm hoping to work with the Landlord Association to do the first one, and then the state to do the second one for the tenants.
Thank you.
All right.
Great. So also in your packet, another housing issue. So starting at page 1 in your packet, you'll see the Coalition for Let's Build Homes. And so this is a program that has started in Vermont. This is a group much like Let's Grow Kids, and you can look at the logo and kind of extract from that. The idea behind this is that agencies, individuals, municipalities, all are working together to focus on housing growth throughout the state of Vermont. And if you look through the packet, and I did try to send this out early enough in the week that you got some time with it, it's everything from strategic planning, working with Act 250, talking about the narrative of promoting shared vision in Vermont, and kind of getting on the same page across the state so we're all moving in the same direction when it comes to housing. There's no financial commitment to being a part of this. I do think that the city would benefit from the conversations that we can have as part of this coalition. We actually got a phone call this week from another community that really likes what we're doing with Roofs Over Rutland, and they'd like to be able to do the same thing in their community as well, and being part of this would allow us to share that information in our processes. So with the board's approval, I'd like you to suspend the rules and approve us joining this coalition.
Alderman McCann.
Motion to suspend the rules, take the matter up tonight.
Second.
Any discussion on suspending the rules? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And I'd like to make a motion that Rutland City join the Let's Build Homes Coalition.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion for Rutland City to join the Let's Build Homes Coalition. Any discussion or debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Fantastic. Now, to mention, thank you very much, by the way. Vermont League of Cities and Towns is also going to be joining, and they are a great partner of the city, so we'll be working with them on a lot of this as well. Couple quick events. I was able to attend the governor's inauguration. He invited several mayors to attend, which was great, and he spoke a lot about what the state is going to be doing to help communities like Rutland specifically when it comes to affordability, housing, and public safety. We'll hear more about that over the next few months, especially during the budget address. So stay tuned for the governor's budget address as he plans to address some of those issues in that particular conversation. This week, we had our first library public outreach, last week. So this is for those of you who didn't make the committee meeting. This is for the library to talk about the potential of moving from where they are now on Court Street down to the Asa Bloomer building. We also had a small, very small, like 5 minutes of the entire discussion about the potential of City Hall moving as well and what our challenges were. The next meeting is tomorrow at noon at the library. It's lunch with the library. You're welcome to come. There's also another one in February. But tomorrow, the librarian for the state of Vermont will be there and we'll be able to answer questions as well. So it should be a good discussion if you'd like an update on that or would like to join the conversation. I do want to say we got a lot of great feedback from all directions in that meeting. And I want to remind people, we are very, very early stages. And what I said in that meeting was, typically we come with a half-baked idea, ready for the public to give us feedback and adjust that idea in the past. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Having the idea almost ready to go and getting feedback so we can make adjustments is good because it makes the process easier for everyone. However, we're at the ingredients stage. We haven't put the ingredients in the bowl. We haven't mixed it together yet. So we are not even to half-baked. We're very early stages. So ideas now go into that ingredient process, and we do want to hear from you. I just want to throw one more thing out there, and then I will give you your time back. So the Neighborhood Stabilization Initiative, I announced this earlier this week with the Police Department, Building and Zoning, DPW, the Rec Department, and the Fire Department. So you may have heard a little bit about this. We started with cleaning up some areas where people shouldn't be because it was very problematic. It was creating health hazards, and we worked our way up to working with homes that were being utilized as drug homes, where elderly and other individuals were being taken advantage of, and we were able to come at this from multiple different angles to be able to address those homes in a situation where typical policing wasn't able to take that approach. The people that either owned those homes or were living in them and were being taken advantage of have been very grateful in the conversation. We've tried to support them through the process, and the neighbors that have reached out, one of the locations was 308 West. I don't know if anybody knows about that house, but it's been very problematic. The amount of phone calls we got just thanking us for the activity on 308 West were absolutely amazing. So we're going to continue on this. We completed phase one. We were able to close down 4 homes that were being used as drug houses, and we're continuing to work with our local entities here at the city, but also state and federal policing to really work towards focusing on eradicating these problem locations throughout the city. That's it for me tonight. Any questions on any of that? Wonderful. Thank you so much.
We'll move on to consideration of special event permit requests. We have a special event permit application for the Center Street Sledding event to be held on February 18th. This is on pages 12 to 13 of your packet.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to suspend the rules. It's been seconded.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And I'll move for the approval of the Center Street Sledding to be held February 18th from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the special event permit request. It's been seconded. Did you want to speak to it at all? Welcome.
I'm Nicole. I work at Casella Construction. I kind of coordinate all our volunteer events. Center Street Sledding is one of our absolute favorite events, so thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me too.
Alderman McCann and then Alderman Gillum.
Yeah, I think last time Arwen mentioned that there was going to be some snow being made and stockpiled. Has that started, or how's that going?
We're getting the snow guns tomorrow from Killington. We're going to start making snow in our men in shop. The WCIX news crew is coming to cover us picking them up, I guess. So that'll be exciting. So you guys can expect to see that.
Awesome, thank you.
It's a great ride if you haven't taken it down Center Street Hill. It's a good ride.
That's good.
Alderman Gillum?
You have a price of admission, it says 1 cent, is that an error?
That must be. It's
Yeah,
definitely
I
free.
think a price,
It's
yeah.
free.
Oh, it's free, that's what I thought, I just want to make sure people knew that.
Free for you,
Okay,
don't tell anybody.
Alderwoman McClure?
Is it store-bought sleds only, or can people make their own sleds? And
So we provide all the sleds for the event just because tubes are really the only thing that work on the hill that we make for some reason. We have hard bottom tubes. We used to borrow them from Killington. We invested in our own just to make it easier and make sure that they were there and ready and didn't have to count on somebody that has a business where they're trying to let people tube. We don't have that.
Thank you.
Great.
If there's nothing further, all those in favor of approving?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next up, Board of Cannabis Commissioners. Can I get a motion to go into the Board of Cannabis Commissioners?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are now on the Board of Cannabis Commissioners, and we have on the agenda an application for indoor cultivator Tier 2 license renewal for Foston Farms LLC. Is there anyone here to speak to the renewal request? Welcome.
Thank you. So it's a license renewal, so we're currently already licensed. We've been licensed since 2022 at our location in Clarendon. So we are currently operating at around 500 square feet. We are trying to move to this location. We've been working at it for about a year, just to make sure that we have everything all set and we're not rushing into anything. So right now we're growing at about 500 square feet at our current location. This location would allow us to be at about 2,000 square feet. And it just helps us. We're pretty established in the cannabis market right now. We supply over 20 dispensaries all over Vermont. And right now we just don't have enough grow space to supply more dispensaries, so this would just kind of help us.
What is the board's pleasure? Alderman McCann.
Ask a question if I can. For the location that you're looking to move into, one, would you be renting it or looking to buy? And then are there any improvements that you need to make to the site?
So everything's, we've had it for a year. We're leasing it right now from Mark Gibo. We're hoping to buy it in the near future, but I'm not sure if he'll be willing to give it up. Everything's ready to go. This is our license renewal, so if we get approved by the board, the Cannabis Control Board on the 29th will be fully operational. But we have made a significant amount of improvements to the building, including a security system with cameras all around the building. There's no blind spots or anything. There's a burglar alarm, glass break detectors. So basically, whenever the alarm's on, if someone even touches the building, the alarm goes off.
very good.
Which is great. We don't want anyone really near the building, so it's good that way.
Alderwoman Taddeo.
Motion to approve the indoor cultivation Tier 2 renewal for Foston Farms LLC.
Second.
Any discussion or debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And can I get a motion to go out of the Board of Cannabis Commissioners?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to reports and letters from department heads and officials. First up is Planning Director Bove with a request related to the Northern Borders Regional Commission Catalyst Grant and State of Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development Municipal Planning Grant. This is on page 14.
Hello. So I don't think I need to ask you for anything tonight, so this is just for informational purposes. I had it on here in case we did, but I just want to talk about these two funding sources that we're hoping to pursue. One is the Northern Borders Catalyst Grant, and this is going to go towards work on Centre and Wales as part of a larger project, which I think we'll discuss later. The pre-applications are due in February. I don't have the amounts yet. I really don't have anything yet on that, except to let you know that we will be working towards submitting a pre-application and then a full application in April, again, towards the Center Wales project, some of the underground work, which is water, sewer, and then some of the above ground work as well. So I will be back in front of you when we have that fleshed out a little bit, what the city will be applying for. So that one might come up a little bit later. The other funding source, which will also come back in front of you because we need a resolution, is a municipal planning grant, which we would like to apply for. And this is going to go towards a couple of projects that the Planning and Zoning Office is working on. Anna, this is what I was going to bring up in the committee, but I'm just going to say it now since I have the mic. So we've got a few things that we're really working on we're spending a lot of time on, and that are due for some, we have some timelines on it that we have to meet. So one is the master plan, which is due in 2028, but we're already 5 years into an 8-year cycle, so we have to start working on that. The other is this Act 250 Tier 1A exemption that the city is going to be pursuing, which would allow areas in the city to not have to go through Act 250 for certain kinds of development. There's also a change in the designation program that came out of Act 181 that we have to work towards. So all of these projects are requiring data, mapping, and assistance. So the municipal planning grant would be to hire a consultant, could be working with the Regional Planning Commission as well, to provide some of these resources for us to accomplish these projects. So we will be back probably in a couple weeks in front of you with a fleshed out resolution and application that we're going to be looking for. So that will be for that. The only other final thing I want to mention is that the Planning Commission is working hard on finishing the land development bylaws right now and the regulations. I think Alderman McCann will talk about that a little bit later, but some of this municipal planning grant, if those drag out a little bit, could also be used for that as well. So this is a funding source we're hoping to get to apply to many different projects.
Any
Thank
questions?
you. Questions?
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next is Superintendent Peters with a request related to a grant and a potential financial match from the Mary Giorgetti Fund.
Okay.
Welcome.
All right, so in your packet has some information, a timeline on a accessibility trail, which we've talked about before. We are ready to apply, so I'm asking really 3 things for today, and of course, answer any questions. So the accessibility trail, there's a map on there that would start at Pine Hill, go down through Lower Giorgetti. The price that we have submitted for pre-application is $514,961. This is a 1-to-1 match. We are allowed to use in-kind donations, which will be helpful for us. And so the request for today is to, 1, allow for myself and Pine Hill Partnership, with their support, to apply for the LWCF grant, and then I guess that would be the first request. And then to ask for up to a match not to exceed $186,567 from Mary Giorgetti. The goal is not to have to use all of that. There is a fundraising piece, very similar to the when we did Justin Thomas. We raised, Rory and the family raised about $100,000. It was a year in the making. This would be very similar to that. We do have a group that is interested in raising money for this particular project. So that's why I said up to $186,000. And then lastly, because we will be going through this process, if we are approved, then we would want this committee in rec committee, so we can continue to talk about it.
Would move to suspend the rules.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to suspend the rules. It's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And I would move to allow the rec director to apply for the
LWCF.
Yep, that grant.
LWCF grant in a partnership with Pine Hill Partnership?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
All right, any discussion or debate on that motion? Alderman McCann.
Just looking here, so the The grant would be reimbursement, is that right? So we would make an expense and then whatever we had been approved for, we would get reimbursed based on what our outlay was in the match?
Correct.
Okay.
It is a cash flow situation, so in this particular grant, we do not have to completely finish the project. We can get reimbursed every 3 months, quarterly. And we manage, so this will be my fourth grant that I've managed in the last 2 years, where we are reconciling and then receiving payback. The match, though, could be up to $186,000, so that we would not be reimbursed for.
Okay.
Alderman Gillum?
Yes, on your map here, so people know at home, this is the lower field, where all these little dots are. That's going to go around that whole perimeter on the lower end.
No, it's not around the whole field. So you go by the building, and you actually go across the boardwalk to the Lower Georgetti Trail, which is the trail through the woods.
Okay.
You follow that, and that trail obviously is not accessible right now.
Right.
That's going to get corrected. But then it comes down onto the ball field where the chimney swift tower is that the maintenance guys helped put up with Rutland County Audubon, and it's going to come back along East Creek behind the baseball diamond, behind it, up through the parking lot, back up to the main building. So it's like 5,000 feet.
So it's walking and biking?
No biking.
Walking.
No biking.
Accessible.
It's accessible.
Accessible.
So it's a walking trail.
Correct.
For mature people?
Limited mobility people.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alderman McCann?
And you've got some comments on here about wetlands. Do you foresee that being any issue, or
Are you, yes. So that's why that price is higher, because of boardwalks.
Okay.
Shelley's been working on this project for,
Over a year.
yeah. And engineering costs have already been supplied and financed through Pine Hill Park. So we're hoping that if we do receive the grant, then we can get some reimbursement too for that. But yeah, wetlands are going to be definitely, I wouldn't say a challenge because we've already been working through those, but that's why that price is going to be higher.
We've moved the trail 3 times.
Yeah. We've walked the
And
trail.
now we have to wait until next spring
Yeah.
for the rest of the delineation to happen because they didn't push the buffer up far enough. I'm learning more about wetlands
Yes.
than I ever thought.
We have walked it many times.
So the motion is to allow the Recreation Department and Pine Hill Partnership to apply for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. And
Do we need to suspend the rules again, or
go right ahead.
I'll move to suspend the rules?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to suspend the rules. It's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And then I would move to allow the rec department to use matching Georgetti funds in the amount up to
Up to
186,000.
up to 186,567.
Second.
All right. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Alderman Davis, Alderwoman Davis, and then Alderman Gillum.
I'll use Alderman Davis.
I just have a question for the treasurer as to the amount, if you know what's in the Mary Giorgetti Fund.
We did just look it up on the last report, Mary, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It was 1.17 and then a 90, I want to say about 1.2. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's about 1.2, but we have 100,000 for repairs at Georgetti.
Correct.
So
Okay.
1.1, a little less
Okay.
than the latest.
All right, great, thank you.
That was going to be my question, so thank
Excellent
you.
question. All right, so the motion is to allow the Rec Department to use the Mary Giorgetti Fund as match for the LWCF grant not to exceed $186,567. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. And then you wanted a referral?
To commit, yeah, to rec committee.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to refer this to the Rec Committee.
So
Second.
moved.
Can we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Engineer Gillen is up next with a request for the timber sale of ash trees. This is on 19 to 24 of your packet.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here tonight, not asking you to spend money. So, our foresters took a look around the water plant, found about 5 acres populated with ash trees. As we know, Emerald ash borer came in, took down some trees. Right now, ash is worth something. If it gets infested, it won't be. So it's a unique opportunity since we've got real easy access to it. Our foresters can go in, cut down the ash trees, load it on a truck, ship it to a mill. Little different than our traditional timber sale way back in the watershed where we will hire loggers to do it. This is a lot of work that we can just do in-house, weeks worth of effort, get it on the trucks, and sell it directly to a mill. So we've acquired price sheets from 3 different lumber yards. I included them in the packet. Allard Lumber Company out of Bristol by far is the best source. So tonight I'm just asking you for authorization, or asking you to authorize the Public Works Commissioner to sell city-owned ash trees harvested from the water treatment facility to Allard Lumber Company. Keep in mind we're estimating the revenue to be around $10,000 to $12,000 exactly until it gets loaded on the scales and get the exact number.
Alderman Adams? Did I see your name?
No, just going to move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to suspend the rules. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Alderwoman Talia.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
This says thinning, so you're not planning on clear cutting the area, you're just gonna
Right.
go in and selectively cut these trees?
Just the ash, yep.
And there's other trees that live there, and you're just gonna let that all just go back and seed in?
Yep. Yep.
Alderwoman Savage?
And I would ask you, is there a plan for replanting any other breeds of trees or more ash or?
To replant?
Or to?
I don't have an answer to that.
Okay.
I can find out though.
All right, so the motion is to suspend the rules. If there's no additional discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
I'd like to move to authorize the Commissioner of Public Works to sell the city-owned ash trees harvest from the water treatment facility to Allard Lumber Company.
Second.
All right, any discussion or discussion? Alderman McCain.
2 questions for you. I can't remember if it was in here, but what would the timing be? And then 2, we're doing this in-house, so that's going to reduce some costs, and that's good. But will we still hold ourselves to the state's acceptable management practices for logging, for water quality protection, and soil health protection? Okay.
Yeah, of course. And this would happen pretty quick.
Okay.
Maybe a week or 2
Okay.
at most.
Alderman Gillum, then Alderwoman Taddeo, then Alderwoman Davis.
I take it the funds go back to the water fund?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that was their
That's my
question as well. There's nothing further. The motion's to authorize the Commissioner of Public Works to sell city-owned ash trees harvested from the water treatment facility to Allard Lumber Company. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Human Resources Director Coyle is up next with a communication about the new required state ethics training.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me speak for a couple of minutes. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the municipal ethics training and essentially compliance that we as a municipality have to act on. So in 2018, the state established an independent body, the Ethics Commission. The commission administers and interprets the state code of ethics and the statewide municipal code of ethics. They provide confidential ethics advice and training to state public servants and municipal officials, and they receive and review complaints that allege ethical misconduct in municipal and state government. In 2024, there was a new statewide municipal code of ethics that was created and went into effect this year, January 1. The code sets statutory baseline requirements for ethical conduct in municipal government. The code of ethics applies to all Vermont municipalities and most municipal officers with decision-making authority. It requires It requires municipal officials to take ethics training, allows anyone to file a complaint alleging a violation of the statewide municipal ethics code with the Ethics Commission and allows the Ethics Commission to refer ethics complaints to municipalities for investigation. So current officials have until late September of this year to sign on to the training, and they will be required to update their training once every 3 years. So we have our existing board, we have our existing staff, and any new officials who may be coming on if we have turnover on the board, new appointees from the mayor, those folks will have to do that training as well. So we're sort of under a bit of a time crunch at this point. Newly appointed, elected, and hired officials have to complete their training within 120 days of being appointed. So I've created a log at this point with everyone who's currently on staff or in a position on a committee or on the Board of Aldermen at this point, so that we can start tracking all of the training and getting this taken care of. The training is roughly 50 minutes. You can do it very easily at home. It's an online course. It does require every person to create their own login, and you can, if you have 2 monitors, it might be the best way to do it, so that you can keep one open and then use the other one while you're doing, because there's testing that you're doing along for knowledge of what you're seeing and reading. There is a brief quiz at the end that has to be completed in order to provide documentation that you understood the training. And this form asks for your name, your municipal title, municipality, your email address, and then it does give you the ability to add a second email, which I would ask for you to put my email on there, because then that way I will get copied. That shows that you've successfully completed the training. And that way we can keep track of everyone. So as far as folks who should complete this, members of the municipal legislative body, members of quasi-judicial bodies that we may have here, advisory budget committee members, auditors, building inspectors, cemetery commissioners, chief administrative officers, tax collectors, department heads, treasurers, mayors, planning commission members, and trustees of public funds and water commissioners. So that's, I will send out an email so that I'll send the link to everyone so that you'll have it. But it really was easy to go through, not too bad, and there's a deck that comes with it. It's about 50 slides that you're going through as you're doing this. Questions?
Questions? Alderman McCann.
What did you say the timeline was for existing, officials and staff?
Say again, John?
What was the timeline for completing it for
So
officials?
everyone who's currently here as of today and actively working for the city of Rutland, we have until the end of September to get this done. Anyone new, like if someone changes positions, they have to do it within 120 days.
Alderwoman McClure.
Is there any sort of repercussion if someone chooses to not comply with the ethics training?
That's a great question, Kiana, and I don't have an answer for you. I don't have the answer on that. I don't think it said anything. It assumed everyone was going to comply with this. I would think if anyone wanted to audit it, they might come into it, question as to why everyone didn't do it. And it is a renewal every 3 years. They have to do as well.
One follow-up statement. I plan on completing the training, so just wanted to throw that out there. But my second follow-up question, for folks who may not have access to a dual monitor setup on their home computer, do aldermen, city officials have the opportunity to come into City Hall and perform that here?
Probably. We could figure it out,
Okay.
sure.
Just because a dual monitor setup is a very unique thing for some people.
Any further questions on the ethics training? No?
Nothing
Thank
to
you.
vote on either.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Next up is Treasurer Markowski with a draft financial policy for donations and fundraising. This was emailed to you.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everyone. When Kim Peters from the Rec Department had the latest request from Giorgetti, it included fundraising, significant fundraising. So I said, what's our policy on fundraising donations? So I pulled together a policy and would like to refer to finance to review. It's pretty general, just oversight from the board. It's really important to know who in the public is fundraising on behalf of the city. I'll use an example. In the fall, I received numerous emails from a student at the high school who was fundraising for his team, and when I was reading the material, it said they were fundraising for the city recreation department. So I thought, that's good. But there's I wasn't aware of it. I called Kim, is this legitimate? So just thinking in that line of just formalizing a policy there. So I would request a referral to committee to.
I'll move to refer to finance.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to refer to finance. It's been seconded. Superintendent Peters, did you wish to speak to this?
I just want to say we completely support this. It's really, when we were doing the Justin Thomas, there were many questions I was asking Mary, like, how do we go about this? Because it was an outside group fundraising for a city park. So after Mary had talked to me about it last week, we also have looked at municipalities that have the same type of policy. So we need a policy. So I'm happy that this is going in, so it will give us more direction. And I think would also give a good chance to educate the board too on how the rec does utilize donations and sponsorships to support some city improvements and programs. So.
All right, so the motion is to refer to the Finance Committee the draft financial policy for donations and fundraising. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And the treasurer's up again with financial reports.
Okay, so I emailed the reports for the quarter end, for the quarter ending December 31st. There is so much information in this report, and I really want to refer to Finance Committee to review it, because I'd like to go over a little bit more details. When I was looking at the report and looking at the balance sheets, there are significant balances that we have held for specific purposes. I'd really like to take some time to go through that with you. What are those things? Thinking of the donations, every time we get a donation, we restrict it in the general fund and hold it. I want to go over those things with you. Do we need to be carrying those balances? Really analyzing what's there. Maybe that could be rolled back into the general fund. Throughout all of the balance sheets and all of the funds, you'll see if there are restrictions. So I'd like to go over that with you in more detail, specifically one being what was left of that ARPA award. I'd love to review that as well in detail. I estimate, before we get to the next item on the agenda, that there's roughly $68,000 that's not assigned for other purposes. But again, wanted to look at that with you. I think it's on, we're spending it already, so I thought I would balance it before we get there tonight. So that was a big item I thought we don't spend enough time on. So when I'm looking at December, if you're looking, if we were to close the books tonight, half of the year, the voters said, this is your budget, we spent half of that now. So that's where we're at on expenses. Some departments a little bit over, some a little bit under, but I didn't see anything that was particularly concerning in those. So I'll mention that. Believe it or not, I'm still working with the auditors on the audit for 24, so that's taken a bit of my time. We're always late with that, but we will have the report issued by the required date of March 31st. So.
Alderman Gill?
We move all her subject matter to the Finance Committee.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to refer to finance. Any discussion or debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you,
Okay,
Treasurer.
thank you.
Moving on, we have Attorney LaChance up next with a year in review for the legal department.
Yes, so you should all have on your desks, and I realize I didn't keep a copy for myself. It's just sort of a brief overview. Thank you, Henry. I'm glad someone's making sure I still have copies and I know what I'm talking about. It's just sort of a brief overview of what the legal department's done in the last year. Obviously, legal is a little harder to quantify sometimes than these other departments, like rec or DPW, where you can actually see what they're doing on a consistent basis. So this is just sort of a really brief overview with some highlights of what's been going on in terms of charter changes, legal cases that have been handled. And as you'll note, it's a fairly short list. Part of that is because it takes forever to calculate up how many actual legal questions I've been asked and questions are answered. I can promise you there are many of them. But so it's just a little overview. It's just for your information, so you kind of get a sense of what's going on here at City Hall over the course of a year. So any questions from anyone or anything?
Alderman Gillum?
I have a question. Oh, I lost it. Number, whatever it is. You have to deal with bankruptcies of businesses in the city?
So when a local business is in bankruptcy proceedings, the city always gets a filing. A while back, there was the opioid settlements. That does occasionally require some city action and things. Sometimes we need to opt in to be part of a settlement. I usually review those just to see whether or not we need to take action, but mostly I end up leaving that up to our wonderful treasurer who keeps track of all of that information for us.
So can you line up as a creditor as getting reimbursed for your expenses from the court?
Me?
No, the department.
It's probably not likely. We've never really tried to go in for it. I mean, I say I work on those, I review them. It's not more than a couple hours of time per thing, so it would take me more time to file it, Billy, than it would be worth. We'll put it that way.
I was just thinking it was a way that we can bring some revenue to cover your budget.
If I get a big enough case, we'll certainly ask for that.
Alderman McCann?
Thanks. I see a comment on here making determinations on scores of parking ticket appeals. I'm curious if the Park Mobile rollout, if those ticket appeals are different than ones with meters or kiosks. Are they easier? Are they harder? You know, how is that affecting your work?
Yeah. So I will say it's kind of been a lot easier. We haven't had too many appeals from Park Mobile. Initially, we had a couple because there were some glitches in the system that have since been worked out. Overall, I will say it's made things a lot easier because people are able to show, yes, I did pay, it's just I parked and then ran upstairs and he came by and gave me a ticket before I got there. There's been a couple instances like that, and there's other times the most common, although I think PD's caught most of them because they've gotten a phone call where someone's like, hey, I paid for parking, but I accidentally clicked on the wrong vehicle, and so it's coming up as a different license plate. PD's able to go in and check that very quickly, and provided the license plate number they do give matches up and that they've paid, they've just been waiving those. So in that case, it's actually been rather helpful. So it looks like people actually are paying or trying to pay and do the right thing, and it's made that a lot easier. We've seen fewer tickets overall because people are able to take advantage of that application.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions for the attorney? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to reports of standing committees. First up is Alderwoman Taddeo with the report from the January 9th meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee. This is on pages 25 and 26.
The topic was the Rutland Civic Center and Library. Committee members present were myself, Alderwoman McClure, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman McCann. Others over the phone. Others present were Mayor Dunges, President Talbot, Alderman Barbagallo, Treasurer Mary Markowski, Alderman Gillum, Randall Smathers, Claire Kopic, Chair of the Rutland Free Library Board, Elizabeth Coulis, Hallie Asante, Executive Director of the Rutland Downtown Partnership, and Gordon Trujillo. The meeting was called to order at 5:30 p.m. Randall Smathers from the Rutland Free Library presented on the Rutland Civic Center. The Rutland Free Library is currently suffering from deferred maintenance. The last significant renovations occurred in 1988. Major repairs are needed, including fixing a leaking roof, no insulation in the building, and no options to insulate the building. Ceiling is failing on windows, and there are some plumbing issues. There are no fully functioning systems left in the building. The plaster is failing. It was hand plastered in 1858. By law, the paint needs to be considered lead paint. Dealing with hazardous materials at the library will be very costly, and the library is not currently ADA accessible and would not pass a test to be classified as ADA accessible. Specifically, it is not wheelchair accessible. Additionally, the library has crowded and unusable staff workspaces. Alderwoman McClure asked about mold issues in the building. There have been black mold issues, but the library ventilated to deal with this. The bottom line is that the library needs repairs. Piecemeal repairs are costly. Paying for emergency costs are expensive. Middlebury added a new building onto their library for $16.8 million. Burlington is redoing their library for $19.8 million. Brandon updated their library for $4 million. The Rutland Free Library applied for a $1.5 million ARPA grant but was not selected. To renovate the Rutland Library would cost about $9 million. If the city waits even more years, the cost will go up. Moving to the Asa Bloomer building at 88 Merchants Row would cost about $5 million. By moving, the library will save taxpayers $5 million in renovation costs alone. It will also save taxpayers money because the Asa Bloomer building is more energy efficient. The library cannot move without City Hall also moving. Alderwoman Davis asked about the cost to City Hall for City Hall to move to Asa Bloomer and what the cost will be to operate the parking garage. Mayor Dunn just spoke about using City Hall and the library to work with developers who could convert the buildings to housing. The mayor said he would come back with more specific numbers and more information. The library is asking the city to support the library to move to the proposed Civic Center. The next steps are to hire an architect, which would cost about $25,000. Alderwoman Davis made a motion to approve $25,000 for the library to hire an architect to complete design services for schematics and cost estimates. The money will come from funds pre-allocated to the library in the amount of $18,400 and an additional $6,600 from unassigned ARPA funds. This motion passed 4-0, and I so move.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion. It's been seconded. Any debate? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
This meeting adjourned at 6:45 p.m.
Thank you. Next up is Alderman Mary Markowski.
I'm sorry, I was listening, but I wasn't at that meeting, so if you could take me off when you did the reading.
Oh, so sorry. Yes.
All right, next up is Alderman Gillum with a report from the January 13th meeting of the Public Works Committee. This was emailed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The meeting was January 13th. Committee members present were Barbagallo, Gillum, McCain, and Adams. Others were Talbot. Other members present, or other folks present, was the city treasurer, city engineer, public works commissioner, Tom and Gail Donahue, Larry Kupelik, and Ed Bove from the planning department, and the mayor, and also Gordon from the Rutland Herald. Meeting was called to order at 5:30. First item to talk about was the phosphorus control plan, final design. Excuse me. And what I did on the report, the paragraph should have been before the motion, so I'm going to read the paragraph first if you're following me. Fitzgerald Environmental Associates completed the City of Rutland phosphorus control plan, identifying potential projects to reduce phosphorus loading to the local waterways and ultimately to the Otter Creek. Due to their previous performance and familiarity with the project requirements, it's financial advantage for the city to contract with them for the final design. The MS4 Community Formula Grant of $488,000 to fund the project, with $122,000 matched covering through the in-kind services. The plan includes complete design work in 2025, constructing the projects at the end of 2026. The final design cost will be between $70,000 to $100,000. Alderman McCain moved to send to the full board for approval to authorize the Public Works Commissioner to initiate the contract negotiations with Fitzgerald Environmental Associates for engineering design services related to the phosphorus reduction project. And I so move.
Second.
The vote was 4-0 out of committee.
We have a motion. It's been seconded. Any debate? So the motion is to authorize the Public Works Commissioner to initiate contract negotiations negotiations with Fitzgerald Environmental Associates for engineering design services related to phosphorus reduction projects. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, item 2, Moonbrook Flow Restoration Plan. Motion by Alderman Barbagallo to move to the full board for approval to authorize the Public Works Commission to initiate a contract negotiations with Watershed Consulting for engineering services related to the Moonbrook Flow Restoration Plan. And I so move.
Second.
All right.
Vote with 4-0 out of committee.
Any debate on the motion? So the motion's to authorize the Public Works Commissioner to initiate contract negotiations with Watershed Consulting for engineering services related to the Moonbrook Flow Restoration Plan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The second motion, Alderman Barbagallo moves to the full board for approval, authorize the Department of Public Works to expend funding from the Capital Sewer Fund, there's an error there, to complete the project, an estimate cost of $65,000. And I so move.
All right.
And the vote was 4-0.
Any debate on that motion? So the motion's to authorize the Department of Public Works to expend...
Mr. Chairman, I probably should read this paragraph so the taxpayers know what we're doing here. The Public Works has suggested that the Watershed Consulting for $65,000 is covered by the sewer water fund. The firm is related, experience to the city of Rutland and the town of Rutland. They've already done those projects with the towns and plus Department of Public Transportation. So that's why we've hired this person, because they've already done some of the work already, and that's why we're bringing them on board. Is that okay with that, Ted? Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so the motion is to authorize DPW to expend funding from the Sewer Capital Fund to cover the cost to complete the Moonbrook Flow Restoration Plan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And the third item was the water main distribution system approval project. The city of Rutland approved a $2.5 million bond. I believe it was 2023. If I'm not correct, you can correct me. For the water main distribution system improvement project. The construction bids came in the amount of $3,101,885,000 for the total cost of the project, including construction engineering, permitting, and contingency fund of 10% of the total cost of the project. With the Public Works value engineering and reducing the contingency fund for 5% and reduce the cost to $2,847,735, still there's a shortage of $347,000 over the budget. The Public Works Department proposed to authorize the additional indebtedness of $75,000 with the match of $273,000 from the water fund. But the committee decided not to go into bonding, but basically if we went into bonding, we would have to put an amendment on the bond and add the $75,000. I guess we don't need voter approval, but the committee decided to table that and leave it in committee for the time being. And so the motion coming out of committee, Alderman Adams moves to the full board for approval to authorize Department of Public Works to expend funding from the Water System Capital Fund to cover the funding gap, and that gap would be $347,000. And I so move.
Second.
Vote was 4-0.
All right, any debate on the motion?
Am I okay with those numbers, Ted?
Yeah, for the most part.
We can correct it right now if you want.
If I may.
Yes, Alderman
So
Davis.
I think the gap says 273,000. I don't know if that's...
Right, but we were going to add the 75 from...
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
We made it a total, we're short 347,000. So we decided to do not to do the 75,000 from the bond, add it to the bond, so where we're paying finances on it, we're going to take it out of the fund, the water fund.
If I may, I think we were approving the 273 number.
Oh, you were? Okay. Then I got it wrong.
Keeping the $75,000 in our back pocket at a later date. We know there's still some additional measures that we can use to reduce the cost, such as a discussion we had about capital planning, allocating some money out of the local option tax to support large road rebuilds.
Right.
So we're having discussions with the contractor to see if, for example, if we rebuild Curtis Avenue while we're there, will that save us some money on the water end? I'm hoping it does, by a lot. And
So the motion should read on the tail end of that, no more than 200,
Yeah,
273,000. Okay.
yeah, I think that was.
So we add that amendment to it, please?
Very good.
We're making
Does
a
the
correction
seconder
here.
agree?
Yes.
Alderman McCann?
Yeah, just to add a little bit of detail, that this project or these projects were going to occur over a couple of years, so that was going to give us some time to see how much the first part of it came in for actual costs, and if we were under the expected costs, it would create a little bit of flexibility later on. If we were over, then we could maybe revisit the 75 add-on to the bond, because I think there was some time flexibility we had and where we could add to that if needed.
Alderwoman Davis?
I just have a question. Why, if we had added $75,000 to the bond, why would it not have to be approved by the voters when they initially approved the bond to begin with an amount not to exceed?
The treasurer has the answer to that, or you have the
I
answer.
think there's a state statute that says that a board of aldermen or selectmen can tack on an additional $75,000.
So there's a cap.
There's a cap, yeah.
It's just 75. We've utilized that before on other projects. Back when Jeff Wenberg was here, looking back at minutes, he's recommended the same thing in the past. But it's just 75. It's mainly in place if you're doing a project and you're finding that it's going to be more expensive. You know, you can fill in a small gap without going back.
Thank you.
Alderman Gillen.
If I may, Mr. President, for the people at home, the water capital fund has 2.2 million in there, and we put an annual contribution from the water rates of 175,000 goes in there every year to keep the fund up there. And that's why the committee decided not to go into debt over 75,000, because we already have some money in there to take care of that. Plus, as Alderman McCain said, this is over a 2-year period, so we can adjust as we go here, so.
Good. So the amended motion on the floor is to authorize DPW to expend funding from the Water System Capital Fund not to exceed $273,000 to cover the funding gap for the water main distribution system improvements project. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And the committee adjourned at 6:25.
Very
That's
good.
the end of our report.
Next up, we have the Committee of the Whole report, January 15th. This was emailed to board members. Pull it up here. Members present were myself, Alderman Adams, Barbagallo, Davis, Gillum, Heck, McCann, McClure, Taddeo, and Whitcomb. Others present, Mayor Dungus, Treasurer Markowski, Commissioner Protovansky, Engineer Gillen, Highway Operations Supervisor McIntyre, Planner Bove, Superintendent Peters, Parks and Facilities Director Dolan, Chief Lovett, Barbara Spalding from the RRA, Lyle Jepson and Cooper Babbitt from Cedar, Kent Belden, Justin Belden, Carling Perry, Elizabeth Coolis, Larry Coopely, Tom Donahue, Gail Donahue, Gordon Detrillo, and Tom Yandell from Capital PCI Consulting via WebEx. The meeting was called to order at 5:30 p.m. The Committee of the Whole convened on January 15th with the purpose of reviewing and discussing several key topics, including the capital improvement plan, potential funding strategies and bond vote, and the development agreement and tax stabilization proposal for the downtown hotel and living project. Mayor Dungus began the meeting by presenting the capital improvement plan, which was developed with input from department heads and other stakeholders and designed to address long-term city needs over a 10-year planning horizon. The CIP outlines that projects must meet a minimum threshold of $50,000 and relate to a capital asset such as infrastructure, buildings, or equipment. The CIP prioritizes projects using a scoring system. Key projects identified for year one include the replacement of the ice rink chiller at a cost of $1.8 million, fire code compliance upgrades for the fire department, and ADA compliant improvements for the police department entryway. Funding sources for these projects may include bonds, grants, the 1% option tax revenue, and departmental funds. The committee discussed a $3.38 million general obligation bond to fund these critical projects, with repayments structured through the 1% option tax at approximately $250,000 annually over 20 years. It was emphasized that utilizing the 1% option tax avoids increasing the property tax burden on residents. Following the presentation and discussion, the committee considered several motions related to the CIP. The first was a motion to adopt the amended Rutland City Capital Improvement Program and Budget. Motion passed 10-0, and I so move.
Second.
Now, Attorney Bloomer has advised us to amend this motion as follows. It should read, motion to approve the CIP, subject to final approval and ratification after the required public hearing has occurred. Does the seconder agree to the amendment?
Yes.
Great. All right. All those in favor, or any discussion on the motion? Alderman Haig.
If I may, when you add up the number between the chiller, the fire department request, and the other, it's like 2.3 million. I'm not sure where the other $1 million going if we're bonding for that. Or is my math off?
I didn't summarize everything that was in the project. I just gave some key highlights.
Yeah, so the plan over the 10-year period has over $80 million in projects. The first 2 years has over $30 million in projects. So the bond would go to $3.8 million worth of those projects that the board would select. The only one that the board has approved so far, as you'll hear in the motions tonight, is the $1.8 million in the chiller. So we'll have the opportunity with the remaining bond balance to come back to the board to choose which projects go in there. And you'll see that in the bond language allows us to do that.
Alderman McCann?
Yeah, so if I remember, the point was the committee was agreeing to the amount of bond that a $250,000 payment over 20 years could get us, and that worked out to the $3 million or so. We only had a couple of projects pre-identified that would go against that. Is that right? So it wasn't that we identified a certain number of projects that would specifically add up to that. We just give ourselves that buffer based on a $250,000 a year payment against a bond from the 1% option tax.
All right, so to reread the motion, the amended motion, motion to approve the capital improvement program subject to final approval and ratification after the required public hearing has occurred. Any further debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next was the motion to approve the question be added to the ballot for town meeting day, March 4th, 2025 for voter approval, 3.38 million capital improvement program general obligation bond to be paid for using funds from the 1% local option tax revenue, pending legal bond language and resolutions from the city attorney. Motion passed 10-0. Attorney Bloomer has advised that we should not do this motion, but rather that I should read the entire resolution that he's written. So buckle up. Then we'll have to suspend the rules and vote on that. So the resolution of necessity capital improvement plan projects. Whereas the Board of Aldermen of the City of Rutland, at a meeting thereof duly warned and held on January 21st, 2025, approved a capital improvement program for the City of Rutland covering the period from FY26 to FY35, developed with the assistance of PCI Consulting, the mayor, city administration, and affected department heads and members of the Capital Improvement Committee. And whereas the CIP approved by the board includes capital projects which need to be undertaken in the near term and that have a total estimated cost of approximately $6,400,000. And whereas the voters of Rutland have previously approved the assessment of, and the city is presently assessing and collecting, a 1% local option sales tax, the proceeds of which may be used to finance the construction, reconstruction, or repair of city buildings, streets, sidewalks, or other infrastructure. And whereas the board believes that undertaking the projects is economically feasible in light of the availability of the local option tax. And whereas all necessary state and federal licenses, approvals, and permits have been secured with respect to the projects to be financed, and the financing thereof are reasonably anticipated to be secured in due course. And whereas the board is obligated to and intends to allocate the proceeds of any bonds issued by the city to qualifying capital projects within the time limits specified in Section 148 of the Internal Revenue Code and the accompanying regulations, and if necessary, restrict the yield on any proceeds of bonds issued by the city pursuant to this resolution. Whereas the following proposal for the incurring of debt in an amount not to exceed $3,830,000 for the purpose of financing the projects shall be submitted to the legal voters of the city at the annual meeting thereof on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Shall the City of Rutland issue general obligation bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $3,830,000, subject to reduction from the receipt of available federal and state grants and aid to finance certain capital improvement projects in the improved capital improvement plan, the total estimated cost of which are approximately $6,400,000 and includes city building improvements, water, wastewater, and stormwater improvements, and street and sidewalk improvements, with the expectation that the entire debt service on such bonds or notes will be paid with a portion of the city's local option tax sales revenue. Now therefore be it resolved at a regular public meeting of the board duly warned and held on January 21st, 2025, that the public interest and necessity demand that the city undertake completion of the projects having an estimated total cost of approximately $6,400,000. And be it further resolved that the cost of the projects after the application of available state and federal construction grants and aid are too great to be paid out of the ordinary annual income and revenue of the city. And be it further resolved that the proposal for the issuance of the general obligation bonds or notes of the city in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $3,830,000 to pay for the project, subject to reduction from available state and federal grants and aid, should be submitted to the legal voters of the city at the annual meeting thereof to be duly warned and held on March 4th, 2025. And be it further resolved that the board and current city administration believe that the entire debt service on general obligation bonds or notes issued to finance the projects can and will be paid with a portion of the local option tax, and that they expect the city will allocate the necessary portion of the local option tax to that purpose through the budget process. And be it further resolved that the city will hold a public informational meeting on the bond issue and any other Australian ballot articles on Monday, March 3rd, 2025, commencing at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, p.m. at City Hall to discuss the bond issue and any other Australian ballot items on the warning. And be it further resolved that all acts relating to the proposition of incurring bonded indebtedness and issuance of general obligation bonds or notes of the city for the purpose of financing the projects be in accordance with the provisions of Vermont statutes annotated number 110 of the Acts of 1892 as amended, and Chapter 53 of Title 24 Vermont statutes annotated as now enacted and as may be amended. And be it further resolved that the form of the bond question be incorporated as written above into the warning and ballot for the city annual meeting and posted and published in compliance with the law.
Point of order.
Yep.
Just a question for the attorney. So we need to actually vote down the report from the committee and substitute it with this, suspending the rules. Am I correct?
I was under the impression that we could just not move the motion out of committee if there was no objection and suspend the rules and take up this.
That's why I wanted to be clear on what way we do
Right,
it.
I was going to say, you could opt to not move the motion and substitute this in, or you could vote the motion down and then vote on this. Either
It's your
would
report, you
be
tell me what
appropriate.
you want to do.
Let's just not move it, and then if you wish to suspend the rules and vote on this resolution.
I just don't want to gum us up before we get down the road and we have to go back and do it again.
So, just a question that was brought to my attention. So it says here for voter approval of 3.38 million of capital improvement program, but in the one that Attorney Bloomer did, it says 3,830,000.
Yeah, I just read it. I didn't write it. Do you want to speak to this?
So I don't know what she's
Good catch.
So I just did a quick look. I believe that we are correct with the Attorney Bloomer version, and the notes in the minutes are incorrect.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, I'd like to suspend the rules.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to suspend the rules and take the matter up tonight. Any discussion or debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And move the resolution
We have to circulate.
Yep.
circulate for signatures. Thank you very much.
Second.
So we have a motion to circulate this resolution of necessity for signatures. It's been seconded. Any debate on the resolution? Alderman McCann.
Could you read it again?
I'll probably be better the second time. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, we got more to go. According to Attorney Bloomer, we do not need the next motion, which was the motion to approve the utilization of up to $250,000, as it is now redundant based on this resolution.
Okay.
Okay? But we do need the next three. So the next one was motion to approve up to $850,000 of the 1% local option tax revenue from FY25 to be placed into the Capital Reserve Fund. Motion passed 9-1, and I so move.
Second.
All right, any discussion or debate on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. The next was the motion to approve up to $500,000 of the Capital Reserve Fund be allocated to the paving and sidewalk projects for FY26 as outlined in the Capital Improvement Program. Motion passed 10-0, and I so move.
Second.
Any discussion or debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Finally, motion to approve the Recreation Department to begin the chiller replacement process pending bond approval by the voters on town meeting day with an expenditure of up to $1.8 million. Motion passed 10-0, and I so move.
Second.
Any discussion or debate? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. The meeting then shifted to the Downtown Hotel and Living Project. A motion was made to enter into executive session to discuss sensitive aspects of the development agreement. Motion passed, and the committee entered executive session at 6:23 p.m. The committee exited executive session at 7:26 p.m., and the following motion was made. Point of procedure, should I read the motion? When should we consider the option to go into executive session? Because we would not perhaps want to vote on the motion that came out of committee until after we had the opportunity to go into executive session.
I was going to say, it depends on what we're intending to discuss, but given that and sort of the sensitive nature of why we went to an executive session during the committee meeting, we would perhaps want to do that for the same reason here prior to discussing this particular section going into a motion. Obviously, the ultimate decision on the motion and a vote on it would then need to be made outside of executive session.
Alderwoman Savage?
Would we need to add an executive session then to?
I had warned the possible executive session under the committee report. Alderman Whitcomb.
So what would the language be for an executive session?
So the language for that executive session in particular, and I don't know if...
I have it here.
I was going to say I can read it, but if you have it.
A motion to find that premature general public knowledge regarding the negotiation of a contract would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage because the discussion will divulge the board's position on the contract provisions to be negotiated.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And motion to enter into executive session with the inclusion of the mayor, treasurer, clerk, city attorney, engineer Gillen, and planner Bove, and everyone from Team Belden to discuss the negotiation of a contract as allowed under Title I, Section 313A1A.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Alderman Wickham, did you have a comment?
A question on that.
Yep.
I'm wondering if whether or not the Belden should be in this or not. And so I pose that
Okay.
question.
Elizabeth, did you
I
want
would
to
love to offer that we would like to join you to start, but we recognize that there may be many things that you want to talk about without us, so we'd be happy to depart at that time. But there's at least one thing that we'd like to bring to your attention during the.
How do we go about doing that where they can be part of it and then potentially not part of it if we wanted to deliberate?
Trying to think of the best possible way to do it. It's not necessarily wrong, but to your point, if we do want to have that discussion, we would need to ask them to leave at that time, and I would suggest that we just make that notation on the record once we enter back into open session, that whatever that time was that they left. So if someone can keep an eye on the
Very good.
clock, that would be.
Okay. So the motion is Alderman Gillum?
Did you do Cedar also?
Well,
they're here as Team Belden. I
Oh,
just
they're
use
part
it
of
as a
Team
catch-all.
Okay, just want to make
Yes,
sure.
you did. Yes, I did 10. All right. So the motion is to enter into executive session with the individuals listed. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.